Hello all, thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk about accessibility, its importance, why it matters, and we'll discuss in particular why online shopping is a nightmare for people with disabilities.
Hi everyone, my name is Ekaterina and I'm a QA engineer at Merkle, Bulgaria. And next to me is my colleague Emil, and he's a development manager. Let's start with a simple question. Who wants to be successful? Please raise a hand. I expect a lot of hands, so yeah, thank you. But what is successful when we are talking about software? Personally, I can think of two things that are the most important. And from one side, I will put the profit, the money that our software makes. From other side, I will put the social impact of the software. And with those two, we already have the formula of a successful software. But now, let us show you an example of an unsuccessful one. We will play a little game. You will hear a user journey thanks to one of the assistive tools that visually impaired people usually use, called screen reader. So, what we'll do, I'm going to ask all of you to just close your eyes and listen. And I'm looking, so everyone, please. We will catch you, definitely.
Every 180 centimeters link. Decrement quantity button. Disabled. Input read-only field. Selected 1. Increment quantity button. Check out now button.
Now you can open your eyes if you didn't fall asleep. Let us ask you a few questions. For each correct answer, you'll get a candy. The first question is, did you understand what the customer is trying to buy? Does anyone know?
Come on, speak loudly. That was an easy one.
No one? No one wants a candy? Okay, you probably didn't hear that at the beginning. To give you the answer, the customer was trying to purchase a Christmas tree. Here comes the next question. Do you know how many Christmas trees the customer was about to buy? Probably none of you. To give you an idea of the journey, the customer was on the basket page, and he had just one Christmas tree added to his basket. He wanted two, though, one for himself and another one as a gift. So he focused on the increase quantity button, and he pressed it once. But nothing has changed, or at least nothing has been announced to him. So he thought there is a bug. So he pressed it a few more times. He ended up of adding 10 Christmas trees into his basket. Rather, he wanted only 2. And the last and most important question is, do you know how much he's going to pay for that? A single Christmas tree costs 100 leva, while having 10 Christmas trees means that he needs to pay 1,000 leva due to lack of accessibility. So I assume you didn't feel well in that journey without not knowing what you're going to buy and what you're going to get. With that, I believe you understand why online shopping could be a nightmare for people with disabilities.
I'm pretty sure most of you know who that person is. But if you don't, that is the director and inventor of the World Wide Web. The important thing here is what he's saying, that the essential part of web's power is to be accessible to all people regardless their disabilities. So now let's see what value accessibility brings to the table.
The value and impact of accessibility is quite various. Did you know that around 20% of the world population consists of people with some sort of disability? The disabilities are quite various. There are visual impairments, hard of heariness, there are motor and cognitive disabilities as well. There are also disabilities that are situational. For example, you break your arm, unfortunately. So this is only for a shorter period of time. And last but not least, some of the disabilities are becoming natural for elder people. So it's a really huge amount of people who are suffering from some sort of disability. The next thing to consider here is the buying power. An organization called the Valuable 500, which consists of really big companies such as Adobe, Coca-Cola, Hewlett-Packard, Lidl, and many others, have an estimated value of around $13 trillion annually buying power for people with disabilities along with their families and friends. So it's a really huge amount of money. And last but not least, you need to avoid penalties. From 2025, people with disabilities would be eligible to sue your company or the retailer you're working for because of lack of accessibility. Fortunately for those people, web has evolved a lot in the last 10, 15 years. And there are many techniques adopted that can make their life easier. Let's start with the basics.
Accessibility relies on 4 principles. The first one is perceivable. Users should be able to perceive digital information without any challenges.
The second one is operable. This means that the website needs to be easy to operate and interact with. And also, the navigation must be simple.
The third one is understandable. All websites should be built around clear language and predictable operations and navigations.
And the last one is robust. The content needs to be reliable across multiple digital platforms and adaptable to assistive technologies.
And we can comply with all of those principles thanks to the levels of compliance. And we have 3 levels. Level A contains basic success criteria for removing serious barriers for a wide range of users. Level AA establishes a level of accessibility that works for most of devices and assistive technologies. And this is the desirable level for most of the websites. And you already heard that it will be a must from 2025. And the important thing here is that it extends level A. Level AAA is the hardest level to accomplish, and sometimes it's impossible to be achieved. And it includes in itself the previous 2 levels that I have already mentioned. And we can comply with all of those levels thanks to ARIA.
Katie mentioned ARIA. ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. Let's take a look at this example. On the left side, you see markup, HTML markup. Please note that in the before and after ARIA sections, the HTML markup is completely the same. On the top right corner, you see the blue dots. They represent the natural HTML structure of an element, of a document. However, the interesting part comes on the bottom right image. The green dots represent what ARIA does. It makes additional connections between the HTML elements. And therefore, assistive technologies, and especially screen readers, are able to better orientate within the page. ARIA is a set of HTML attributes, and it is widely supported.
How hard it can be to apply accessibility on already developed single-page application website. Well, trust me, it was hard. It was a nightmare, such a disaster. But we've succeeded, and we've learned. And the main thing that we've learned is to think about accessibility on time. So if you're developing your website right now, please make it accessible to all people. In the next section of our presentation, you will hear about a client of ours that is with the company from the beginning of his business, which means 16 years of development of a single-page application website, and unfortunately, most of them without applying accessibility. Let's start with the first issue. Our first major issue was that our stories were designed for whole templates, like the checkout template, the basket template, and the product details page template. At that time, we were still very green with accessibility. So the development of our first story took us 2 months of suffering and dealing with different broken components around the website. And probably you will wonder why that happened. Well, it was because we have a React component-based site. I know what you say. That's the best. We can reuse one component in many different places. And you will be right, but we've applied accessibility on the title dropdown that you're looking at, and we've succeeded to broke the filters dropdown on product details page. So we've came fast with the solution to talk with the client and rewrite all of our stories. So we can implement accessibility by components, not by templates. Which, in other words, trust me, it will be a lot of work for the QAs, mostly done manually. But in that way, we can guarantee that we have an accessible website.
For the next issue, imagine that you're using a screen reader, the one that you have heard before, and the screenshots that you see on this presentation are not what you're looking at on the screen. There is no screen for you. So the journey is the following. You're browsing through a product listing page. There are many tiles in there. One sounds interesting to you. So you decide to open it. What happens is quite obvious, right? You land on the product details page. But why it's obvious? Because you can see it. People who are using screen readers, naturally, in a single-page application website are not aware of that change. In a single-page application website, the view changes are not automatically announced. And therefore, the customer is lost. He's not aware where he is, what happened. He's not aware of any changes. So there are many solutions to that problem. We have highlighted one of them. You can introduce a visually hidden element. In this example is a div with area wipe white. All of the changes that are made within that div would be automatically announced to the end user via the screen reader. So it's really helpful and easy solution. Talking about visually hidden elements, let's move on to the next issue.
You're looking at the custom elements that, by the book, should be accessible with the arrows of the keyboard. But we have from one side the client requirements, and from other side we have the style guide. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to fully control the appearance of native elements, and we have to resolve that. So we've come with a solution to implement native elements such as input radio button and select plus option that are controlled by the custom ones. Which, in other words, what will mean? That we have the appearance of the custom elements and, in the same time, the behavior of the native ones.
For the next issue, imagine that you're using only a keyboard. There is no mouse for you. For example, this situation, disability, broken arm. And you, again, are browsing through a product listing page. Again, there are many tiles. And one sounds interesting to you as well. So you focus on the add button. You can see over there is a focus over the add button. So you press it. What happens is that a model window is being displayed. So you're still on the product listing page, but the model window is in there, a quick buy model window. Unfortunately for you, the size you have been looking for is not available. So you decide to close this model window and to continue browsing through the rest of the tiles. So you focus on the close button, as you can see over there, and you press it. What happens, and what you would actually expect, is that the focus is put back of what has triggered the model window, but actually that could not be the case. In a single-page applications website, usually the model windows are dynamically rendered, and if they're closed, they're actually removed from the DOM. Thus, anyone in this room knows what happens if a model window has a focus within and you remove that model window from the DOM, where the focus goes.
You get a candy for that again, only if you want.
Sorry? Exactly. It falls back to the main document or the
Catching?
body. Yeah, okay. It was okay. Exactly, it falls back to the body element. And that would mean that the customer needs to start navigating through the entire website from the beginning, which is an awful experience. We have many solutions here. We have highlighted just two. The first one is you can save as a variable the tile. And once the model window is closed, you can focus back to the add button within the tile. The other solution is more of a generic one. It saves the document active element as a variable, which is actually the currently focused element. And once you close the model window, you put back the focus to the add button with JavaScript. But again, there are many, many solutions, but this is what would work like a charm. Moving on to the next issue.
This one is very simple. Obviously, we have pretty large navigation. And a lot of those elements are interactable, which was a serious issue. Why? Well, because if a user lands on our page, he has to pass through all of that if he wants to go to the main content of the page. And trust me, it's not the best user experience that you want to have on your website. But the solution is very simple, easy, very helpful. We've implemented Skip to Main Content button in the beginning of the header. That will be visible only if the user navigates through keyboard or with the screen reader turned on. And the best part of that solution is that it can be used on various places, like for the carousels, for example. And let's see our last essential issue.
Applying accessibility would mean that you'll be facing one and the same issue across multiple elements. In that example, we have focusable elements. We have an input field, we have 2 buttons, and we have 2 tiles. Those elements, once focused, they need to have a visual outline. The outline would look like that. And here comes the solution. In global issues, do not be afraid to apply global solutions. On the left side, you see a really simple CSS that matches all the focusable elements and puts an outline to them if they're focused. Of course, you can amend that, but in a simple way, it would work like a charm. The rule of thumb is that all of the focusable elements need to be interactable, meaning that you should not have focusable element that doesn't do anything. And let's move on to the next section of our presentation.
In the next section of our presentation, you will hear about the instruments that help us on a daily basis to deal with accessibility. So let's start with the first one, the screen readers. The screen reader is an assistive technology that is mostly used by visually impaired people. What it does, it converts text, button, images, and elements around the web page to speech or braille. So we have the most popular one for desktop with Windows, JAWS and NVDA. The only difference between those two is that JAWS is the paid one and NVDA is the free one. We have the built-in software for iOS operation systems called VoiceOver. And last but not least, we have the Android screen readers called TalkBack. So now let's see how the developers can make their life easier.
One of the tools that we're using are linters. If you guys are not aware of what linters are, these are add-ons to the IDE or the code editors you're using, and they're validating the input code that you're writing. Talking about the accessibility field, the linters are validating whether the code is WCAG compliant, and they can detect errors while you're typing your code and give you some suggestions. The next tool that we use.
Have you ever wondered why Facebook is in white and blue? Well, I personally haven't, but it's an interesting story. It's because Mark Zuckerberg is color-blinded for colors like red and green. So, if we want to make sure that our website is accessible, we should have a color contrast ratio equal to 4.5 to 1. And how we can check that? We have color contrast checkers in the semi-automated tools, such as Axe, but unfortunately, they don't catch every time properly the color ratio. That's why, if we have any doubts, we should do this manually. And for that, I'm going to give you a few applications. For Windows, I have used TPGI and color contrast analyzers. I have used Google Chrome extensions. It's, again, a good option. And for iOS operation systems, I have used Contrast, which is very easy and fun to use too. I have mentioned X, so let's learn more about it.
X DevTools is a really good tool. It has a paid and a free version, but even the free one does really good job. While the linters are checking the input code, Axe checks the generated markup, and therefore is able to catch any errors, WCAG errors, that are caused because of nesting different components or having them as siblings. So we really recommend you to install at least the free version of Axe DevTools and to use it.
Same as Axe is another tool called Wave. Wave is a free web accessibility evaluation tool that identifies ways to make our web page more accessible. How we can use it? We can use it directly on our browser. We can open any web page, and we can turn Wave on. When we do that, we will see this kind of image. Wave will create a version of our web page with information about the accessibility evaluation. And here on the picture, I have already opened the Details tab. There we can see a detailed explanation about all of the errors and the missing elements on our page. And after all of those tools that we have mentioned, let us give you some advices.
We have prepared a couple of takeaways for you. For us, the first and more important thing is the education. You need to educate yourself, your team, and the client you're working for, why accessibility matters and how it can be achieved.
The next one is that you should update your definitions of done and ready. You should incorporate accessibility whenever the story is developed. So that way, we will be sure at the end that we have an accessible implementation.
And last but not least comes the automation. Accessibility is a really time-consuming process. So the more you can automate, the better for you.
And with accessibility, it's like with everything in life. It will last as long as you take care of things. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
We still have time for questions.
Yes, we have time for a few questions.
Yeah.
So
if anybody has.
Do you have any questions?
If not, we'll be around.
Mostly
Yeah, there
smoking.
is Wade.
Thank you for the talk, very enlightening. Could you expand a little bit more about the upcoming regulation next year? Like, what does it concretely entail? What are the bare minimum requirements for companies?
So
where can we learn more?
Yeah, good question. Talking about compliance is going to be AA as a bare minimum for the European Union starting from next year. So it will be a must. There is already a law in the states that operates, and the same will be applicable for European Union and the sites that operate within them.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.